I'd like to introduce MJ. She is on the board of directors of the Friends, and she chairs the expedition committee. Retired school administrator from Iowa, participated on several Wabakimi project trips, and has done solo trips to test her skills. Her presentation tonight is planning your Wabakimi trip. There, you may be going a little more into the wild than you anticipated, and so planning a trip takes a lot of information and resources, but you can enjoy the wilderness trip of a lifetime. MJ is going to talk about accessing Wabakimi, where to go, safety, and the gear to take. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to MJ. So you should be able to just go ahead and fire her up there.
All right. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
I can.
Okay, I'll assume. All right. Okay, well, thanks for joining tonight. And the purpose of my presentation is to give you some information if you have not planned a trip to Wabakimi before. And full disclosure, I have not planned a trip to Wabakimi before. This has been a learning experience for me. I have planned other trips though. In going to wilderness trips for 15 years and planning my own solos and taking others into the boundary waters, that has given me some good experience. And I did go to 3 Wabakimi projects, and you can see my groups over here. Those were great, and I would like to. One of my goals is to plan a trip to go into Wabakimi with a group, and to that end, I am still learning. So this presentation, I'm going to be getting into some basic information about Wabakimi, how to access it. I'll get a little heavy into route planning and safety and communication and what gear to take. The reason I went to Wabakimi to begin with on the Wabakimi project trips, and for those of you who are not familiar with that, that was developed by Phil Cotton, and they were trips in which we were clearing portages and putting together campsites and so forth. And it was his dream to make Wabakimi a paddling destination. And so we worked pretty hard on that. And I think it was like 14, 15 years. I can't remember that went on. And I went on one of those trips because I had been going to the Boundary Waters and Quetico and wanted to get further into the wilderness, but wasn't sure how to make that happen in my world. And when I saw at Cornucopia that there was this Wabakimi project, I thought it might be a good way to get some information. I don't have this on my full screen, do I? Okay, how's that? A little better? I was hoping to be able to get a little further into wilderness safely, and I was able to go with people who knew what they were doing, and it was reasonably affordable. So I thought that worked out pretty well. So should you plan a trip to Wabakimi? Well, I really hope so. If for nothing else, the sheer beauty, and of course you can find that in many wilderness areas. The wildlife is a little bit more unique than other places. And as you can see, the fishing was pretty good. See, so that was a good reason to go too. But one of the first things I noticed when I went on these Wabakimi trips was that, well, this is a little different than what I'm used to. There are some distinct differences between Boundary Waters Quetico and Wabakimi. The first thing to notice is the size difference. Here is Boundary Waters, here's Quetico, and Wabakimi is about equal to those together. On the other hand, it only gets a very few visitors compared to Quetico and Boundary Waters. And it also includes some areas all the way around here, the Crown Lands, and there are other provincial parks and reserves nearby. So there's a lot to explore around there, so there's a greater opportunity than maybe you've had before. Some of the differences that I'm going to cover next are, one of the things I noticed was like, how do you go about even finding portages, in this area? This is really hard to do. And the portage conditions themselves are sometimes quite difficult. In order to find your way with maps, it was going to take a lot more work than I was used to too, because it takes more resources than just one map. In the Boundary Waters, I could take a map and go. But this was going to take a lot more resources. Plus, it was a way more remote, and so it was going to take a lot more planning. These are portages in the Boundary Waters, the landings. One of the things I always noticed there was that you've got your map. The map says the portage is over here, and that is where you look for the portage landing. And by gosh, from a distance you can see some kind of a V, in the land that tells you, yeah, there it is. There's the portage. And sometimes they're even small, and sometimes even if they have not been used because there was a burn, you can still find them. But in Wabakimi, we were finding portages that were not well used, and so therefore it was a lot tougher. For instance, in the same area here, we came across this particular area that looked like it could be a portage. It was certainly cleared and almost looked like one. But unfortunately, it was about 2 feet off the water. And there was no rocks down there or anything to get out on. So it was difficult to make that into a portage landing. However, over here we found in the same spot some roots that were pretty solid that we were able to land on, and all we had to do was clear this out. However, that was in 2013. So I'm not sure what it looks like now and if it would still, be able to be found. Down below, there's also an example here of a portage that we had joined and had already been partially cleared, and we were finishing up that portage. And the landing was really not very clear to find. So we tried to clear it out. It only looks a little bit better here, but again, probably is overgrown by now. So finding the portage landing could be difficult in Wabakimi. And even once you find the portages in Boundary Waters, Quetico, you can find it's a clear path, whether it's narrow and smooth or rocky and hilly. It's very clear, go this way. But in Wabakimi, it's a little less clear. Unless it's traveled more frequently, it's probably difficult. We started off fighting our way through areas, cutting through logs and, and tossing them aside. And they might look like, the path might look like this when we were done. And if you were looking for a portage, you might be able to find, logs that are sawed and tossed to the side, and that might be an indicator that there's the portage. But it's still going to be a little bit difficult to find in some places. Another difference would be just accessing Wabakimi. Whenever I've gone to the Boundary Waters, I've just driven there, and I could drive right up pretty much to the put-in point and park my car not too far away in a little lot. That's a little different in Wabakimi. First of all, these are the main roads that lead up to that direction. 527 comes up from Thunder Bay, and 599 comes up from maybe International Falls area. And it's the roads that come off of this to get you any closer to Wabakimi are secondary roads and probably not in good condition. And certainly you aren't going to find a lot of parking lots to put your car, and it might not be a safe place to leave it. So going by car might not be the best choice. However, you might be able to get shuttled, into places. There probably are exceptions to that. So another thing to do or consider is taking the train. And that looks like a unique way to go in. And I think I might like to try that someday. This goes across the bottom portion of Wabakimi, and you can enter maybe at Savant or at Armstrong, but you do need to know the schedules, and the schedules vary, as in Savant Lake is from Savant Lake as a departure point, it is certain days of the week, and then Armstrong is another certain days of the week. And they also come at different times of the day. So if you are coming from this side and going east, you're going to be dropped off during like morning hours or daytime hours. Coming from Armstrong, you're going to be dropped off at night. So you have to take those things into consideration. And I've got some resources later to help you with that. There are drop-off points all along this area, and they coincide with canoe routes. So that is nice. And there's mile markers and things to pay attention to for that, and the timing of the train. Let's see, the second or the third way route in would be by airplane. And you could fly in out of Armstrong or Savant Lake or Pickle Lake, even out of Thunder Bay, I imagine, or other areas. But we've always, at least with the Wabakimi project trips, we flew out of Armstrong using Mattice Lake Outfitters, and I would recommend them. They were very good to us and did a nice job. And I would recommend taking a plane if you can at all afford it. It does up the price, quite a bit, but it was well worth it for the view you get. And I'll show you some pictures on that in just a minute. So summary, same thing on the car. The conditions of the road may not be safe to park and paddle. Might want to consider having a shuttle. There are about 18 drop-off points between Armstrong and Savant Lake. So there's plenty of choices there. I should mention right here, because I've got links throughout this presentation, and I've included or given to Dave to post along with this video of this presentation, a document that will have all the links in it so that you can have a one-stop shop kind of a reference. And in there is this link, and this link contains the rail access information that is on the Friends of Wabakimi website. And here are some departure information about the train and when it leaves. By plane, this is probably a low-end estimate of how much it costs per person per each way in US dollars, but that's kind of a rough estimate I give myself, and it is expensive, but as I said, well worth it. And here are some main outfitters that you could contact to arrange for that. Here's some of the views you get. I mean, that's magnificent. You get to see possibly even where you're going to be traveling. You're flying over quite a bit of territory, but it's just beautiful, and you can see why you're going there for one. So in the process of making a route, I talked to Vern Fish, the person who introduced me tonight, and I had a long conversation with him by Zoom, and I learned from him what he goes through when he's planning a trip. And I found that to be a good learning opportunity for me, because I would like to plan a trip. And so he said, first thing to do is to start off looking at trip reports to determine whether or not, is that the kind of trip I want to take? Is that how long I want to go? Is that a place I want to see? And look at those detailed descriptions, and some of them include map depictions in them too. So that's really good information. Or, you could just get from word of mouth, just talking to people about their trips, finding out if that's something that you would want to do. I know that when I personally plan a trip, I want to know about certain pieces of information. I'm going to look at those maps and other resources, and I'm going to look at to find, what are the rivers and the lakes that I'm going to be traveling to? Where are the canoe routes going to? Where's the height of land? Because that might tell me something about what I need to bring. Because if I'm crossing height of land, it's possible I might have to carry gear over something that might be difficult. I like to know if there are going to be outpost cabins along the way. And I definitely want to know about where are the rapids and portages and campsites and things like that. And in this case, I do want to know about road entries and train entry points. That's good information to have. So he referred me to a whole bunch of resources, and I'm going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail in the next few slides. The the Wabakimi planning map, which is put out by the Friends of Wabakimi, so you can buy this off of our website. The planning map that comes from Ontario Parks, which also has some unique information pieces. The Canadian Topo Maps, which is very helpful for getting topographic information. These are the maps that come in booklet form from the Wabakimi project, so it's a result of all of those trips and the maps that were created from those trips. Here's Vern referenced this at the very beginning introduction. Lawrence Mills is putting together this Wabakimi Canoe Routes book that we're going to be selling on our Friends of Wabakimi website. It's going to be great because it will have both descriptions of routes and along with maps and so forth. So I think you'll find it very useful. And that's supposed to come out sometime this spring. And don't forget, he's going to be presenting in March. So got to catch that. He's also got his own website with in which he has maps and route descriptions. So I found that to be a really good resource as well, and an example of one of his maps in detail. And then, of course, trip reports. And I just kind of plopped in Vern's trip report off of canoeing.com. But those are all the resources that he was recommending to me, along with some others. So starting with trip reports and word of mouth, going to places like canoeing.com or our own website, Friends of Wabakimi, has a trip report forum on it. And I would highly recommend using that information and contributing to it. If you go on Wabakimi trips, please consider sending your trip report to us so that we can add it to our collection, and because that's just going to go to helping other people. Here are some other paddling forums. Again, all of these links are in that document I have for you. And a paddling blog. In particular, on the trip that I'm looking at right now, Ramblin' Boy had a really good blog that really gave some great description of the trip as well as some maps. So those are some great pieces of information. Here's that Canoe Routes book that's coming out very soon. And then this is a kind of a close-up of one chunk of that Ontario Wabakimi planning map. I didn't want to put the whole thing on here because I really wanted to show you some of the details that I thought it gives you that other maps do not. One of the things that I think that they do a good job of is showing that rail line and the stopping points, the mileage markers and so forth, and where the campsites are along the way. They do a good job of marking the canoe routes within Wabakimi Park. They don't cover anything outside the park, but they do have what's in the park. They also have portages marked along with measurements for that. And they have campsites on the map. And then I don't know if you can see this because it might be, no, here's one right down here. I was thinking that some of the little pop-up things might be blocking your vision of it, but this little house with an O in the middle of it is an outpost cabin. And I didn't find those in any other resource. It was really nice to see where those are located because, you know, for one, it's a good reference point, and for two, they can be a refuge for you if you gotten into some trouble. We weren't in any trouble, but this is a Wabakimi trip in which we camped right outside of an old and unused outpost cabin, but our gear was nicely stored underneath the roof so that it stayed dry. So that was kind of nice. Anyway, that is the resource, the beginning resource. I next went to the Wabakimi Canoe Routes planning map. And this one has a few different pieces of information. First of all, I don't know if you can see this really well, but there are little purple vein lines going throughout here. And you'll notice that those purple lines also go on the outer sides of the park itself. So those are canoe routes. And so our planning map goes out into those outer areas of the Crown Lands. And that's really nice because you might want to explore some of those along with the park itself, and you might need both. An additional thing that I really liked on this map, oh, you know, something I forgot to mention on the other map was that they didn't have lakes and rivers labeled as much, not as many lakes and rivers were labeled on that map as are labeled here on this map. And I kind of like having the labels because that's a good way to reference as you're traveling along. And a third thing that this map has that you can't see, but I'm going to describe it and then show you it on the next slide, is that this is divided into sections or quadrants, and you can't see that it's a really light set of yellow lines, and each of those quadrants are labeled with an area, a designated area. And that is a reference to the Topo Maps. So this is a digital piece reference that you can get online, and I've got that information in that set of links. But this is what it looks like on the map, either on land or in water. And it's really light to see. I don't know if you can read this, but it says 52-H15 or something like that. And you would go to region 52, which is designated by that number. And then that pretty much contains most of Wabakimi is region 52. And then the rest of the numbers and letters refer to that particular quadrant that you're looking at. And this is what you get from that, is not just one, but multiple maps pertaining to those areas. And it is a topo map, so it's going to show you the highs and the lows of the land and so forth. It also shows you in the water where the rock gardens are, the big boulders and so forth, and marshes and swamps and where the rapids are and so forth. I've found this to be more detailed than the other maps. And you get multiple blow-ups of each of those sections. So I found that to be really useful to look at for information. The next resource was the Wabakimi project books. We have 5 of those books. This is off of our website, the store that's on our website. And there's 5 of those, and they are, I think, coordinated with each of the watersheds throughout that area. And as we did the projects, that got logged, into this and recorded in terms of maps, and they're pretty detailed. And then they have certain sections that are blown up into more detailed, more magnified level of detail. And so you'll see portages, portage lengths, campsites, rapids, important information that you would need. Really good information to add to your collection. When I talked to Vern, I asked, well, okay, what do you take all that stuff with you? That's a lot of stuff, a lot of resources. And he said, well, now what I do is I kind of cut and paste it all into like Word documents and take that with me. So he has, a large map case, something in the neighborhood of 20 by 13, and I've got links to those kinds of things. And he says a Word document can, the largest printout he can make is a 19 by 13 document. So he does several of these documents for the whole trip that he's going to take. And he just plops, cuts and pastes things into it and then annotates. So this looks like it came out of a topo map. And then he put his own annotations on there for campsites and things that got magnified. And this looks like it came off of a Wabakimi project set of maps. And then he also adds any verbiage that he gets from information that he reads, maybe from trip reports or so forth. Some other resources that he named off that I went exploring on that looked really good were these: the Atlas of Canada, Toporama. You have the ability to, to create and look at more closely. And this one in particular I use in just a minute, I'll show you, but it's a make a topographic map. So there are some map resources where you can really use to manipulate and put together what you would like. Google Earth is something that I have used even in the boundary waters. Sometimes I just want to get a bird's eye view of things, because when you're on the water, it's hard to see it the same as on a map. And so sometimes I'll go look at it from the satellite view to see what a portage looks like, or a set of rapids look like, or something. And he uses a similar kind of thing. And I found an even better resource like that in this resource right here, that Ontario Make a Topographic Map. So now I'm going to try to show you what I started doing using all that information, great information that Vern gave me, into planning my own route. the first thing I had to do was decide where I was going to go. And I'm not sure that this is where I will end up, but I was asking Vern for some advice on this, and he thought maybe I might enjoy going into White Clay Lake and going on the Raymond River. And the Raymond River kind of branches off this direction, and he suggested going south to Cliff Lake and maybe beyond if I wanted. So I thought, okay, that's a good reference point to start. So I got that from word of mouth. So the next thing to do was to go look at those planning maps. And the first one I looked at was this Ontario map. And here what I noticed right away was that there were some outpost cabins along the way. So that's something I wanted to know about, and campsites were noted along the way there too. And I noticed there were some roads down here that perhaps if I flew into to White Clay Lake, maybe I would exit by vehicle. I don't know. Not sure what to consider just at this point. Then I went to the planning map that the Friends of Wabakimi puts out, and I noticed a few more things. First of all, I noticed that there were far more lakes and rivers named, and so that was really nice. I also noticed that they had the height of land is indicated here, and I know that it crosses right across the route that I'd be taking. So that made me wonder, well, what does that look like? Is that going to be a waterfall? Is that something I'm probably going to be portaging around? But is that a waterfall, or is it is the river going to be different directions? At that point, am I entering a whole different system? So I have to find out more information about that. What else did I notice here? Oh, I went to the topographic references off of this map and went to the next piece. I started playing with the whole word idea and plopping things in. So I went and got the topographic map from the yellow maps and plopped in one piece that started with White Clay Lake. And this is just the kind of one end of White Clay Lake that the Raymond River flows into. And it kind of gets chopped off here. And I got to thinking, well, okay, if I take a plane in and land in there, I'm wondering, are there any campsites nearby? So I went and looked at the Wabakimi project maps to see if they had any more information. And sure enough, they did. They had some campsites here on this lake. So if I decided to land there, and depending on what time of day, whether or not that was going to be a traveling day or not on water, might decide to camp before actually packing up and going. Don't know, just something to consider. As my eyes went down the route, I saw here a set of rapids, and I thought, oh man, I wonder what that looks like. It looks like a kind of a long chunk. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. So I tried Google Earth, and this is as close of a picture as I could get that was clear to see what that looked like. Didn't really give me much more. It's almost the same size. So I went to that Ontario MNRF Make a Topographic Map tool and got a way larger view of that. I could actually see rocks and rapids. I know what it looks like, and I'm guessing I'm not going to be paddling that section. So good to know. I will need to gather even more information as I go in planning. I went a little bit further in my planning and landed some more topo maps into my Word document. And I was looking at where the Raymond River splits off, and another system is over here. And I wanted to get a good look at this because it looked like it could be a confusing place. So kind of had to turn this way to get it on there. But I went to the Wabakimi project maps, and again, I found some details that might help me. I saw that there's a campsite in the middle of all that and some portage information that's there. So some good stuff. Now that's really all the further that I did in my own planning of a route. I just wanted to give you an idea of how to apply what I learned from Vern. But going off in a little bit different direction now, if I'm going to be planning this route further, I want to consider doing one of the trip programs that Friends of Wabakimi is encouraging. And it's basically a self-guided reconnaissance expedition. I'm still doing my own thing, designing the trip myself and so forth. But Friends of Wabakimi might be able to help me with a number of things. Maybe finding trip partners, maybe offering route advice, which I've already gotten, which was great. And maybe finding some trip reports or other resources. And hopefully they're gonna, I will provide a written report to them of some kind that will tell them a little bit about my trip and maybe document it with pictures or something, because they could post that on their website, and then that would be a resource for future people going through. So I'm hoping that you will consider doing that as well if you plan a trip. I will need to get a permit. So I went to a website that can help me do that. And they do have a phone number I can call as well. And then since I am going into a far more remote area, I need to consider, what I'm going to need for safety and communication. I don't have actual experience with the spot, but I did in my I had a 6-day solo in the Boundary Waters a couple years ago, and I used the Garmin InReach for that. And so I can speak to that experience. And I did like the fact that it could send prearranged or predetermined messages to a designated list of people. And I think it did it by email or text. Honestly, I can't remember, but I think they got it by email. And the Garmin has some other features that are really nice as well. In fact, interesting, I requested the lower end model of the Garmin, and for whatever reason, they didn't have it available when it was time to send it to me. So I got to benefit from the upper end model, and which had some additional features on it that I really liked. So I'm not so sure I won't rent that the next time. But one of the things I really liked was the weather forecasting ability. So it had some pretty detailed information for the area I was in, and I like that a lot. Anyway, here are some links that I've got in my document for you for where to rent that at. And I thought it was pretty slick to rent that online. You could choose to use a satellite phone. You could purchase one or go through a rental, and again, some links for how to find that and maybe some estimates for costs. And that might give you an additional way of communicating voice to voice. So that's kind of nice. This is a picture of the gear that I take when I've gone on my solos before. A lot of stuff to think about when you're packing gear for the wilderness. And when I went looking, I've got my own list that I also share in that document with you. But that list was built year after year. I modified it, but it started with, researching online and trying to find out what other people do. And it's grown and shrunk and changed throughout time as I've decided what I really need. And when I went looking for this presentation, I found that there were some specific gear that was recommended, or no, not recommended, required by Canada, and that's the first 4. A PFD, of course, and hope you are bringing it and wearing it. A whistle, a baler or a bilge pump, and a heaving line for rescuing people. That is a good list to start. Some additional things that you're probably going to want to make sure you have on hand are some extra dry clothes for if you get wet or dumped on or it rains on you. Some waterproof packs, a food barrel. I happen to bring one of those big, tall blue barrels. I also have a Garcia smaller bear barrel, but I find the barrels to be pretty handy for carrying the stuff, plus keeping it out of rain. Probably a pretty high priority is to make sure that you send your trip plan to other people, friends and family, including things like, here's where I'm going, here's where I think I'll be at this point in time, but even some information on the color of your tents and canoes and color of your car and where is it and license plate and all that stuff. Having a spare paddle, of course. Maps are pretty darned important. And I would actually recommend highly that every person, every adult in the canoe has a copy of all the maps that you have. because maps get lost and ruined. So pretty handy. And plus, if you're all traveling in the same direction, you want to be able to discuss that, and it helps to have that resource in front of everyone's nose. Some tracking lines for tracking your canoe through areas that you don't have to portage through, and rain gear, windbreaker, and hats. A pin kit is something I hadn't even considered before talking to Vern. And he said that, well, you know, you could dump, and your canoe could get pinned between rocks and trees. And it would be virtually impossible to extract without a pin kit. And so I did a little research on that, and have provided you a link to that. Personally, I do bring some work tools along. Not everybody does. I bring a folding hand saw and a collapsible backpacking saw. That's here and here. And I don't bring an axe. Those are just too heavy for me, but I do sometimes bring a hatchet along with me. And most of the time I'm using that for just once I've gathered wood wood that's free out in the wilderness, for fire, I will chop it up or saw it up and use it. So I find it useful for that. Might find it even more useful in Wabakimi. My gear list looks something like this, and I put things in categories. What's in the camp kitchen, what do I need for camping and shelter, safety gear, things like that, personal items, first aid. And I've got a whole list of things that I put in my first aid, the tools that I want to bring. And I even put on there the things I have to get done before I leave the house on the trip. And that is at the back end of that document that I've got included for you. I'm hoping that you will decide to go on a Wabakimi trip, and I hope that some of the resources I've shared here tonight will be of help to you. I've got a long ways to go to plan my trip, but I feel like I've got a good start, and I feel a little bit more confident about that. I think you would very much enjoy a trip to Wabakimi. It's beautiful. So again, what you'll have access to after this video is you'll have access to a link for the video on our Friends of Wabakimi website, along with that document that I've given you. Plus, I also edited the video of the discussion with Vern from 2 hours down to 20 minutes. So that was pretty good, I thought. So that will be there for you as well. So I would encourage at this time, any questions, or if you have something that you would like to share with the group, that's fine too. And I'm going to let Dave take over with monitoring that.
And you want to downsize your screen?
Will do.
There you go.
Yes, we've had a couple questions come in via the chat. Andy asks, are there any good sources for GPX files that contain waypoints to upload to a GPS? And Brent Sinclair has pointed out that Wabakimi is on Paddle Planner now, and that's a downloadable. I don't know, are there any other places where people can get waypoint information for Wabakimi?
And just to point out, Paddle Planner is one of our corporate partners, so that we've entered into an agreement with Paddle Planner so that they can use the information we've gathered. So they're one of our corporate partners.
Yes, and Jerry Vandiver asks if we have point out where any of the pictographs are on any of our maps, and I think the answer to that is no. And that the park itself has a policy against identifying pictograph sites.
And somebody's asking, how do you hang those big barrels? Do you want to answer that one, MJ?
Well, personally, I don't. So I don't know how to answer that. I have never hung a barrel so I place it off away from my tent in the kitchen and leave it be. Oh, you know what? I do take the harness that comes with the bear barrel, because this is one of those blue things, and I will wrap it around a tree, but I think a bear could, manage that pretty well. So I don't know how much work it does.
Other questions for MJ? Well, I'm gonna take a chance now and unmute everybody, and we'll see what happens. Maybe. Did I do it? How's that work here? I did it wrong. Now I really feel stupid. By the way, MJ, you set a record. This is the largest crowd we've had for a webinar. Somebody's asking best time of year to go. You want to go with that one, MJ? Oh, I have to wait a minute here. I got to unmute you.
How about
There
that?
you go. Sorry. Yep.
I've only been on Wabakimi project trips, and I think I did two of them that were earlier in the year, and one that was like the very last trip of the year. So that would have been in September, I think. And that one was a little bit on the cold side, but I don't know, I wouldn't go, I would worry about flies and mosquitoes. So I'd probably choose later in the season.
I think your limitations are snow in the spring and snow in the fall. I mean, middle of September, you're late, and anything before the middle of May is too early. So
Like put pots on top of the barrel and tie it to a tree so that at least they pots fall.
oh, there's Debbie. Somebody's asking the question if the portage from Cannon Lake to Tamarack is viable as a way into the park. I do not have an answer to that. I do not know.
Yep.
Anybody?
I was just trying to find it on the map.
Well, and John is saying it'd be pretty tough to, John's saying it's pretty tough to hang a pack in a boreal forest. Small trees, small branches.
Yeah.
38 weeks of trips up there. Wow.
Cougar sitting in Thunder Bay. How worried should we be? I don't know. I don't know about the cougar in Thunder Bay.
Is that about?
Hi, Amy.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I unmuted myself, so
Very good.
probably everybody else can too, but
If they want, yeah, it'll be total chaos when they do, but let's go for it.
I was just wondering if anybody has actually done the train.
I have.
Debbie has.
I have a couple of times.
And how was that? Where did you catch the train?
We caught it in Armstrong. We caught it at night, I believe. I was with Bill. I think Bill's on here. It was freezing. We couldn't even get the ropes off the trucks. They were all frozen solid. But the train was fun. I think we went to Allenwater.
We went to Savant Lake on that first trip I was with you on with Phil.
Okay, then I've been on two.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's a great way to go.
Yeah, it's a great way to go.
That's where they were.
So when you arrange it, do you say which stop you want to get off at? Is that how it works?
Yes.
You gotta make sure, the conductor knows where you want to get off, and then they stop the train for you.
Hmm.
Not
Yeah, when
forever.
they did it, they stopped with GPS coordinates, so.
Well, they actually have mile markers, I believe. And so you gotta be
Yeah, they
very
use the
specific.
mile markers.
Did you take the train back as well?
We flew out.
Yeah. You can arrange to be picked up by the train though. Same thing, you have to supply a mile marker that you want to be picked up at.
Okay.
And because the train schedule is not terribly reliable, you definitely have to be there several hours ahead of time, and you may have to wait a few extra hours if it's late. But
Can I just jump in here quickly about train travel? COVID has put significant restrictions on the train. The dining room is not open. So either if you are in a sleeper, you have to stay in the sleeper pretty much the entire time. And if you're planning any length of time, you have to provide all your own food. So these are some of the things you need to consider. Now, it could all change again by this summer, who knows? But at this point in time, those restrictions are in place.
Hopefully that'll change.
Hopefully.
That's good to know. Thank you.
When you take the train, do you leave your vehicle at the train station in Armstrong? Is that a place where you can leave your vehicle safely?
No, it's not a train station. It's just a parking lot. And I would recommend that you arrange to have an outfitter pick up your car, take it to their location when you leave, or however you get back. If you come back on the train, same thing. But the problem with coming back is knowing whether it's going to be on time or not. I guess the outfitter can put it back and locate your car there at the parking lot.
Okay, thanks.
Better use an outfitter to keep your car safe.
Oh, I just see PJ Justison is on here. He's a Temagami guy. What's he doing here?
Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Hearing me, yeah. I'm here. Well, number one, I did a trip not last summer, the summer before, through a group of fellas. Totally enjoyed it. And then made a connection with the Friends of Wabakimi through Dave and Vern, and they've done a wonderful job in formalizing the organization for sure. And so we worked a little bit with them in terms of what we were doing with the Friends of Temagami. And now I'm here spying somewhat on you guys and what you're doing with your webinars. This is pretty incredible stuff, right? This is the stuff that you know, gets people interested and the good information and the good contacts and the good links, and this is really what makes the difference with getting people to the
we should find a way to do this between the two organizations. We can do this offline, but that'd be an interesting dialogue to compare notes and trials and tribulations between the two organizations at some point.
What outfit is he with?
For sure. One of the things that I can speak to, which has been wonderful to watch you guys do, and I know that I don't know much of the history of Phil Cotton and the organization. I know bits and pieces of it, but this is what you guys are doing is the most important, most incredible thing that you can do for the area, is have people who are interested and on the ground and doing trips and have them, offer feedback to those that are interested in exploring the area and providing the detail. And anybody can make a map, anybody can run a small organization. The challenge is having people out there and that are experienced, and you guys are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. But some of the inspiration came from what you guys are doing. So we appreciate the effort you put into your program, and hopefully we can copy and expand upon what you've been successful doing it, but in the Wabakimi region.
Perfect. And as you guys know, we're happy to help. We're, as you guys have come to realize, resources are precious, but we will do what we can.
Well, and someday I'm hoping that when we get the border open, everybody gets healthy, we can do a booth at one of the Toronto shows as a cooperative effort. Maybe a year or two away, but I think that'd be a great opportunity. And we certainly would need your help to make that happen.
Yeah, for sure. And we're happy to help anytime, you guys.
Great.
You're doing a wonderful job, though, for sure.
Thank you, PJ. Brent Sinclair is asking, I think it's Brent anyway, where's the best place for birding in the park and to see woodland caribou? Does anybody have a good response for that? we'd be interested in putting something in the newsletter about issues like that, if we could get some feedback or good information. We did do an interview with the park's biologist, Shannon Walsh.
Walsh,
and it's on our conservation page, but she didn't get into the issues of birding. Now, woodland caribou, I think we have a little more experience with. We know they like certain kinds of habitat, old growth forest with lots of that caribou moss, and they like islands for their rearing and their calving.
And they're elusive. There aren't that many of them to begin with, so you really got to be lucky to see them.
Hi guys, I've got a question for Mary and maybe Vern as well. When you're putting your information together to create your own maps or your own, your own information to supplement the Topo Maps and everything else, are you just going cutting and pasting and making PDF files before you print?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I just scan everything, throw it into a Word document, move it around, add my stuff to it. In my opinion, part of the process of doing that is it kind of gives me a mental image of where I'm going and forces me to think about all the variables about a trip. So it becomes a safety issue, because as a result of doing that, I have a pretty good gestalt of what I'm running into, and I won't belabor the point, but did a trip up in Nudavant, 300-mile trip, and I missed one rapids. I did not put one set of rapids on the map. We did not know what was there. Came around the corner, and it was a series of ledges, and we flipped and rolled, and we're 100 miles from Hudson Bay. It was one of those things that could have killed us. It didn't. But I missed one set of rapids. So my point of all that is providing that kind of detail is a safety issue, and it forces you to really think through and do your homework and know what's there. And like MJ pointed out, she saw a rapid on that route coming down from White Clay. Well, I've been there, and it's actually a little waterfall. So it's a good portage. It's not going to hurt you because you're going upstream, but you need to know that that's there, because that's going to slow you down. That is going to take more time to get around. So those are the kind of things that I think you get from going through that process. It's a safety factor. It forces you to really know what you're getting into, and it helps you estimate time. But yeah, it all comes back to scanning and cutting and pasting.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, because it forces you to pay attention to where you're going. And it's also nice if all your partners on your trip are doing this as well and contributing information, so that everybody's invested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead, MJ.
No, I was just agreeing.
It's time consuming, but it's well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it makes for a safe trip. And again, when you leave the kind of the friendly confines of someplace like Algonquin or the boundary waters that are heavily traveled and everything's well marked, and then you move into an area like MJ was pointing out where you can't even find the portages or they haven't been used in a decade, that homework is critical to having a safe trip, and then making sure everybody enjoys the trip. Otherwise, you end up one of those things where you're standing there on an island and nobody knows where they're going, and they're all arguing with each other, and that can deteriorate pretty quick. So homework is a safety issue, and it's also a group, the ability for a group to stay together as a functional unit.
So there are no portages or campsites marked in the park. Is that true?
Yeah, they're not marked in the park.
Okay.
And sometimes they're hard to find, and that's what the beauty of the materials that Phil Cotton put together. A lot of this stuff has at least been documented. So otherwise, as you know, it's real hard to plan a trip if you don't know where you're going to end the day.
I think the frustrating thing has got to be the fact that you have to have so many resources to get to put all that information together. So hopefully,
yeah. And you know where I'm going with this. That's what the guide is going to do. It's going to at least start to frame that up. One of the questions that just popped in is size of campsites. If it's on our maps, somebody correct me here, but it's 2 to 4 tents should be able to fit on it. Sometimes it's a little more on the 4 side and sometimes a little more on the 2 side, but you should be able to get a couple tenths on it. If we put that map symbol, if we put it on our map, that you should be able to at least get two tenths on it, if not a few more.
Okay, the question about the Ontario Parks Wabakimi map, I believe I've got that link in that document. I will go and check right now and let you know.
Well, canoeing.com sells it, and I know
Okay.
a couple other places sell it as well.
Yep. And again, that's one of our corporate partners. So do business with Tim Eaton at canoeing.com.
On your map information, do they talk about the direction of the water flow? No, do they all flow north or?
John, I believe the title tells you which way the water is flowing. I don't know if you're still on there, John, if you could maybe expand upon that.
Yeah, I'd have to look at it, but yeah, the title, I believe, is dictating the direction of flow. So from
So
to.
from A to B means the water's flowing from A to B. So if it's Lake 1 to Lake 2, that you should be, the pathway should be flowing that way.
Okay.
Also, the planning map shows the height of land, so you can tell what's north of the height of land and what's south of the height of land.
Okay. Good point.
And that height of land is only on our planning map.
That's correct.
The Wabakimi one.
Right. Well, we are approaching 8 o'clock. We've been at this an hour. I think we'll hang around a little bit longer if you want, but we really appreciate the participation. Again, hopefully the guide will be out fairly soon in March, we hope. I will also point out that we will have a virtual booth at Canoeacopia, which is the March 12th, 13th, and 14th, the weekend, even though the event is not going to be live, but there will be a virtual booth. So I think there'll be opportunities to do what you're doing right here, have a conversation. And again, we're hoping to have another webinar on March 7th with Lawrence Mills, and maybe, just maybe, we'll have another webinar on February 21st if the speaker can make it work. So Dave will do an excellent job of posting that on social media, both events, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to pop in again. And again, as BJ said, we really appreciate you listening, and we hope you become a member and share your trip reports with us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, MJ.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you for participating.
Yes.
Much appreciated.
Good
Thanks
job,
for
MJ.
information. Take care.
Question: in addition to backcountry, oh, I missed it. Got away from me here. In addition to backcountry permits, can't keep up here. Where to go? Do you need to select your campsite? No, you don't have to tell the park authorities, although they do want to know when you get your permit approximately where your route is at. That's a safety issue for them, but you don't have to tell them where you're going to be every night. But you do have to kind of give them your route and where you think you're coming out, approximately your timeline.
Yeah, it's not like the busier parks where they want to make sure that the lake is completely, isn't overcrowded and all the sites are taken, because that just doesn't come up in Wabakimi.
No, not when you have less than 400 people a year going in. There just isn't that much traffic. It's like Phil Cotnoy said, it's very rare that you even run into another canoe. You might run into somebody on an outpost cabin in a motorized boat, but to actually run into another party in a boat, it's a shocker. Where'd you guys come from? It doesn't happen very often.
Thank you, guys. The park's website's not very clear on that.
Okay.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to stop recording right now.